Are we sure aliens come from outer space? Maybe they're from another dimension. Or maybe they didn't come from anywhere because they never had to arrive. Here's what we know for sure. There is an unidentified phenomenon eager to interact with current and past humans here on Earth. And we're very certain that at least some of the entities involved are not members of the human population. So the question is, where or when do aliens come from and why? There's 9 possible answers. To figure out which is right, we'll explore a few other questions like, is the source of the phenomenon mainly terrestrial, meaning from Earth, or is it from anywhere else? Have UFO and alien encounters ramped up in recent times, or has it been constant throughout the millennia? And does the government actually know more than you and me, or are they in the exact same position we are, trying to sort it out?
Well, if there's anything, it's rotating.
I've got answers to all of these questions and more coming right up, but there's a more important question I want you to focus on. So try to keep this in mind as we go on. Is this a predominantly physical phenomenon with beings made of flesh and technology made of nuts and bolts? Or is it a psychological issue found largely in the minds of the unfortunate experiencers? Or is there an even crazier metaphysical component? Let me show you exactly why the answer is all of the above. There's only 9 possible explanations for where aliens originate from, with each one getting weirder as we go. One of these has to be correct, though I suspect the answer is a mixture of a few of them. Let's work our way through these so you can see why the 9th theory, although it's the most unconventional and hardest to accept, is looking more and more like the correct answer. First up is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The term extraterrestrial means aliens could come from anywhere beyond Earth's atmosphere, but still in our universe. In the 1940s and 50s, people theorized that little gray men came from Venus or Mars, our closest neighboring planets. As our technology improved, we began to accept that the grays could even be coming from other star systems in our Milky Way galaxy. Any further out would be impossible without faster-than-light travel, which we presume doesn't exist. This is a reasonable explanation and probably true to some extent, assuming there's more than one type of alien entity out there visiting us. But this theory can't account for all of the details we experience, and therefore, it can't be the whole story. Next, we have the null hypothesis. When using the scientific method, we always begin with the assumption that the hypothesis we're testing is false or null and void. That is, until we discover indisputable and repeatable proof that it's true. So in this case, the null hypothesis is that aliens flat out don't exist. None of the other explanations for what people see and capture on film even matter. Until someone brings hard proof, like an alien body or a crashed UFO with advanced technology, the assumption is none of it is real. This is the safe bet, or the cop-out, because at this point in time, we have treasure troves of evidence, whether that be personal experience, radar visual confirmation, multi-witness sightings, and endless videotape. And that's just on the physical side of the phenomenon, and only what the public has access to. The null hypothesis can no longer be taken seriously. Our third possible explanation is the transdimensional hypothesis. I know when I said faster than light travel doesn't exist, some of you were like, but what about wormholes? What about aliens and UFOs appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye? This is what transdimensional means. It means aliens are passing through the membrane of our space and time from another dimension. We could draw a distinction between hyperterrestrials and xenoterrestrials. Hyperterrestrials would come from higher spatial dimensions in our universe, like a four-dimensional being dipping down into our 3 dimensions. Xenoterrestrials would come from an entirely separate plane of reality than we could even start to comprehend. This is getting pretty far out. These aliens' technology would be completely indistinguishable from magic. Their bodies would be monstrous blobs of flesh, which is exactly what we saw in the jellyfish UFO video from Iraq in 2018, in which our Department of Defense issued a statement that boiled down to no comment. Now we move on to an increasingly popular and ancient explanation for aliens and UFOs, which is the spiritual hypothesis. From stories of biblically accurate angels to Ezekiel's wheel, and seen in many paintings over the centuries, these entities have been around for a long time and have been considered to be completely spiritual in nature. Whether these are angels and demons or jinn, the label doesn't matter. The concept itself explains a lot, including many of the interactions people have experienced, whether helpful, like spontaneous healings and foreknowledge of impending events, or hurtful, like abductions and receiving bodily implants. We might only perceive glimpses or partial interactions with these aliens under special conditions, such as shamans consulting the ayahuasca jungle gods. All of the backstories of these spiritual entities would explain exactly how these aliens got here and why they do what they do. I don't find this unreasonable at all, especially if you consider that these creatures might need to develop some ephemeral technology to interact with our side of existence in any meaningful and physically detectable way. And this brings us to the next theory, the chrono-terrestrial hypothesis. Let's break that word apart. Terrestrial would mean from Earth, while chrono would refer to some aspect of time. So what we're saying in layman's terms is time travelers. Without digging into the mechanisms by which all of this would be possible, or all of the paradoxes that would need to be resolved, there's not much to say. But there is a lot to show. Across the last century, there have been a lot of photographs taken that seem to show people dressed in non-period appropriate clothing, carrying technology that we now know comes from our present day, and much more. We found tons of UO parts, meaning out of time and out of place artifacts. These are items that have clearly been teleported over temporal and geographical distances. A simple example would be cracking open ancient stones and finding modern-day screws and hammers embedded within. And it's not just these anomalous artifacts that have become out of sync with time, but even people. There's been a handful of reports of people finding temporary portals, going through them, and finding themselves in the past or the future. And let's not even talk about John Teeter in this episode. Is this possible? Sure. Is it likely? I doubt it. Because we'd see at least some evidence of time refugees making insane stock market gambles and winning crazy lotteries. But it could explain why the typical gray alien looks humanoid and why they're so interested in our genetic material. The passage of time will definitely change our appearance, and who knows what kind of radiation we'll encounter that'll require some DNA repair. The sixth possible explanation for the alien presence on our planet is the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. The prefix crypto means hidden, so we're talking about a hidden species of beings here on Earth. Consider a species that weren't vertebrates, had no bones or exoskeletons, and left no fossil record. Maybe these intelligent, non-human entities developed over millions of years in the depths of our oceans. 70% of the Earth's surface is ocean, with more than 95% of that ocean remaining unexplored and 75% unmapped. This could explain why we see UFOs emerging from underwater fairly often. And I mean, dolphins and octopi are pretty intelligent. Another angle on this would be the reptilians. There's an idea that a smaller species of dinosaur survived the meteor and the subsequent impact winter and continued to develop their intelligence and technology well before humans ever stood up on two legs. Consider that the giant squid, once known as the mythological kraken, and the gorilla, the dodo bird, and even the platypus were all classified as cryptids at one point. So who knows what else is out there? Is this likely? It's certainly possible. These Earth aliens may have used their technology to conceal that they've slinked away into the crevices of the ocean bottoms or some global underground cave network. Let's face it, humans only bother to detect threats, and we're really good at ignoring what we're not looking for. Now we're gonna get real weird. Next up is the psychocultural hypothesis. Humans have been telling mythological tales since the beginning. We mentioned angels and demons, but consider the half-serpent, half-human Naga, the secret commonwealth of elves, fauns, and fairies, and the Navajo skinwalkers. These are just a few examples of beings that are presently thought to exist only in the realm of storytelling. It's thought that we inject meaning into these stories and build a mythological framework that helps guide our cultures into the future and helps us maintain our identities and our moral compasses. But some researchers, such as Jacques Vallée and John Keel, feel it's the other way around. These entities manipulated us, seeding themselves into our mythology at the right times and in the right forms to guide us towards or away from something. And this could be what aliens and UFOs are doing. Sure, maybe we invented them as the new forms of fairies for the modern high-tech human. Or maybe it's the same set of entities shape-shifting or embedding themselves in our minds to guide our sciences and cultures in specific directions. There's even the idea of pure thought forms that exist independently of our minds, like we discussed in the Tulpa episode. We may assume they're imaginary, or maybe they're not, and they simply exist in a purely informational lattice of reality. Some kind of mythological manipulation is most definitely going on, except these aliens aren't purely non-physical. Without a doubt, they're either made of flesh or can appear to be made of matter, including their spaceships. The next two theories were once considered to just be nonsensical science fiction or conspiracy nutjob ideas. But more and more, they're gaining weight in terms of their believability. Let's start with the eighth theory, which is the proto-human hypothesis, which basically means the first humans. What if aliens didn't come from out there, but were here all along? As we recover more ancient documents, unearth more archaeological findings, make more advances out in space, and put all the pieces together, we're starting to discover an overarching storyline. The theory says that humanity has risen and fallen many times. As far back as the Younger Dryas impact and freezing event 13,000 years ago, and even way further back during the last magnetic pole reversal 780,000 years ago, these mass destruction events reduce humanity's numbers significantly, causing a loss of technology and even cultural memory over the generations. And most recently would be the global flood that every culture on Earth still remembers. The question becomes, why don't we find remnants of their tech, assuming they didn't use metals that wouldn't erode to dust, which most would? We do find things like identical symbols being carved globally before any wayfaring or ocean sailing people could have spread them around. Another solution is, many of these civilizations are now at the bottom of the ocean as water levels have changed drastically. We also have semi-modern records of word-of-mouth memory of pre-diluvial, meaning before the flood, high-tech societies like Atlantis and Lemuria, and we may have even found their ruins. So how advanced did their technology get? Could they leave the planet? We've detected what could be interpreted as structures and ruins on the moon and Mars, as well as other types of similar anomalies all across the solar system. Is it possible that a group of these people survived, retained their technical prowess, and have remained hidden from us, minus their purposeful and controlled efforts to be seen flying around in UFOs? Maybe. I'd wager a guess that these civilizations did exist, but probably not still. I'd say that they simply became us. And now for the grand finale. This ninth theory is the most far out and has two prongs. I'd say that the first prong is partially true, and the second is mostly true, and both are extremely intriguing. This final, craziest theory is called the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, proposed by John Keel in his book, Operation Trojan Horse in 1970. What we're talking about here when we say ultra is a group of humans or aliens from Earth that surpass our normal limits. They've stretched their knowledge, intellect, and technology well beyond our own. Let's start with the first prong involving actual aliens. Aliens who've been here for so long, they might as well be terrestrial. There's two possibilities here. John Keel, like Jacques Vallée, felt that we're dealing with non-human entities existing in some wavelength of energy undetectable to humans. Keel concluded these beings weren't from any other planet, but have always been here all along, just in another realm parallel to ours. And like we mentioned in the psychocultural hypothesis, these interdimensional beings orchestrate the manipulation of our belief systems for purposes unknown. And in Keel and Vallée's reckoning, these entities are the source of all paranormal phenomena, like a transcendental trickster god. The other possibility was popularized by Eric von Däniken in his book Chariots of the Gods in 1968, and ultimately the show Ancient Aliens based on his work. Zecharia Sitchin joined the ruckus in his 1976 book The 12th Planet regarding the Anunnaki. The theory basically goes like this. All of humanity's various gods throughout history were ancient astronauts from other planets. These aliens engineered humans to rise above the apes, which explains the missing link in our evolutionary framework. They taught us agriculture and general civilization. They aided us in building some of the structures we find around the globe that we still have a hard time explaining. Why'd they do this? Did they get stranded here? Did they have some kind of job to propagate and encourage the development of intelligent life throughout the galaxy? We don't know. What we do know is, if we take the idea that the gods were aliens and look back at a lot of religious stories, we can see a lot of substantiation for this theory. For example, we see stories of high-tech devices like a nuclear-powered algae-producing mana machine, aka the Ark of the Covenant. We could go on forever. I'm fairly certain physical aliens have been observing us for thousands of years at least. There's too many canvas paintings and cave paintings to deny it. Not to mention stories so impactful they survive to this day. And I'm even more bought in on the Keel/Vallée theory of ultra-terrestrial manipulation of our mythology. And I'm even open to the idea that it's largely demonic. The second prong, an expansion of the original ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, also explains a lot of what we've been seeing going on, especially on the physical side of the phenomenon. It eliminates a lot of the more difficult problems to solve. Now, a simpler solution isn't always correct when living beings are involved, but it's definitely a clue. Remember that ultra-terrestrial refers to beings from Earth that are beyond the rest of us by any measure you apply. We mentioned ethereal beings and ancient astronauts. This second prong deals with regular, everyday humans. What we're dealing with here is an isolated, closed community of humans with scientific knowledge that's somewhat more advanced than our own. The key is, They've discovered paths of technological or occult development different than what we've focused on, and they've kept it a secret. Their sciences, their belief systems, and even their existence itself is kept separate from our known cultures. Consider how over the past several hundred years, the public is constantly catching glimpses of technology in the skies a few decades ahead of our own, ahead of any official acknowledgement of their existence. An example would be airships and zeppelins in the latter half of the 1800s. In this case, they aren't guiding our development, they are our development, and we're eating their technological breadcrumbs decades later. This would be where all of our government's black budget money goes to, and it would explain why some patents get wrested away from inventors and why entire avenues of mathematics research gets shut down. How long has this been going on? Is this some kind of post-World War II breakaway civilization, complete with multinational secret space programs? Is it some kind of ancient occult group, like a Paleolithic deep state? Is the tech rooted in science or magic? It's hard to say, but a lot of people feel they can see a sustained elite agenda exercising an occult influence in our culture. We know UFO sightings and experiences have been consistent over thousands of years. And since the emergence of nuclear weapons by the normies, there's been a repeated messaging from these aliens that we need to eliminate these types of highly destructive weapons that can degrade our shared environment and its livability. The problem is, we don't know how much deception is involved. The idea of UFOs from outer space could be a ruse implanted by them to distract us from ever seeking them out here on the planet. Abductions and the harvesting of reproductive cells could be due to a need for them to increase their genetic diversity over endless generations of interbreeding. Some of these abduction cases involve being taken to caves or under the ocean. One of their primary goals would be to keep their cohabitation of Earth a secret from us, since we're far greater in number. We pose a possible threat of annihilation, exploitation, or of assimilation, causing them to lose their identity and to move backwards technologically. If they're not a prehistorical group, then it's possible they've recovered technology like anti-gravity engines from crashed ships from off-planet civilizations. We did have an explosion of technology all of a sudden involving high tensile, high strength, and high temperature metallic alloys with relatively low density and weight. And only half jokingly, let me show you this strip of Velcro up close. And what are our governments aware of? If this is real, is the government in cahoots? Newly formed agencies like the US Space Force are only partially explainable by evoking national defense interests. And we've had congressional hearings like the CIA's 1953 Robertson panel that misled the public on the UFO topic. And we keep finding out, only decades after the fact, about programs like UFO crash retrieval teams, offices like the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Immaculate Constellation, and of course, the Majestic 12. We have no clue what the timeline would be on the activity of these human ultra-terrestrials. My only answer would be yes, all of it. Ancient occult groups, modern black budget sciences, secret programs on and off planet, recovered technology from alien vehicles. Yes. Yes to transdimensional spiritual entities invested in manipulating us. Yes to cryptids and prehistoric alien visitation. And a big fat no to time travel. These are only my opinions, and I have to say that if I want you to be able to see this video. And for the same reason, I only found one single scholarly article regarding this topic, and they had to say that all of these topics should be viewed with extreme skepticism, and it still didn't get published. They did manage to sneak in the dangerous idea that these topics deserve serious consideration, and they're right on both accounts. We should take extreme care, and we should expect the highest standards of evidence possible. But we should still research it with serious consideration, because whatever's out there, or whatever group was always here, they do not seem to have our best interest in mind.